Um, I presume everybody has the agenda, and so I'd like that we take a look at the minutes and see if there's any discussion about items that are on the are from the last meeting in March. Any corrections or um, changes or anything or omissions that anybody's seen? Anything at all? I'm looking at the pictures of who's participating. I'm so happy that we have Sanjay Ray with us today from Marion Higher Education, because I hope we can get a few words from you about Pell Grants and things, or anybody else who's involved with that. So we'll come to that at some point here. So maybe we should just go around and refresh ourselves as real quick. Everybody who's on, can we get everybody to go around and introduce themselves, or just very quickly name and title? Because I think we only meet once a month and or so as a group, so it might be good. So I'll start, and I'm Steve Stewart. I'm chair of this commission, and I'm hoping that we can expedite our work here and continue on with with what we have an interim report due in June, so we'll talk about some of that stuff a little bit later. I'll give it to John Griffin. John, you want to introduce yourself and then ask somebody else to introduce themselves?
Sure. So my name is John Griffin, and I'm a recently formerly incarcerated citizen returning back to society. During my incarceration, I was very active in several different education efforts, and I firmly believe in the value of education for currently incarcerated individuals, as well as those being released and returning back to society. So I'm here to lend my voice and my thoughts on how we can move these efforts forward. And I pass the baton to Ann Boccini-Pack.
Hi, I am Ann Pack, and I am co-founder and director of advocacy for Prepare, and I am also a formerly incarcerated person. And Gordon, would you like to go next?
Okay, I think I can do that if I can get back to where I'm supposed to be at. I'm so sorry. My speaker is on. Okay, thank you. I'm Gordon Pack. I'm a formerly incarcerated person as well. I pretty much got my education in the prison system. Literacy lab, GED, AA degree, and now I'm in a position to continue with my bachelor's out here in the community. I'll pass it to who I know here. This is Sanjay Rai.
Thank you, Gordon, and good morning, everyone. Sanjay Rai, Secretary, Maryland Higher Education Commission. I will also take this opportunity to respond to Stephen's question about Pell Grants. These are financial aid scholarships available to many students across the country. If you remember, last year we had a lot of hiccups because federal government was changing their technology system on which students apply for federal financial aid. So, but because of the work that happened last couple of years, this year Department of Education has a better technology system, and we are certainly benefiting from it. Maryland has typically stayed at 24th, 25th in the country in FAFSA application completion. I'm very happy to report to you that as of today, we are 12th in the country. And the states that are ahead of us are very smaller states, not larger states. We often compare ourselves with Virginia. We are few steps ahead of Virginia. So far, fingers crossed, things are okay. But we did have some hiccups, technology hiccups from the federal side last week, because folks who take care of federal system they were on leave and they didn't have access to the IT systems. Even the best IT systems sometimes freeze, things happen, and you need folks with expertise to go and address those issues. So apart from that, no other issue. Good news from the state side. Typically, we award another 114 million state scholarships. It's beyond what the federal government gives. And this year, governor has added another $24 million to students for low-income students. So we are feeling good about it. But uncertainties are certainly there. I don't want to underplay. That's not the only one. There are a lot of other uncertainties as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So when we have discussions later on higher ed, we might talk more about some implications there. Andrea Cantora has been our leader in that area. Thank you. I don't want to have everybody give a big update, but I thought that was very important given the climate in Washington, D.C.
And
somebody, Sanjay?
Yeah, I'm going to give a baton to Andrea. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Andrea Cantora from the University of Baltimore, and I direct our higher ed and prison program that operates at Jessup Correctional Institution. And Secretary Rai, you're probably busy at 1 o'clock, but we have a meeting specific about higher ed and prison, and you would probably be useful to that meeting. You're welcome, but I know it's a busy day. Thank you for being here. I'm going to hand it to Meredith.
Thanks, Andrea. I'm Meredith Conde. I'm the Director of Operations and Prison Affairs for the Goucher Prison Education Partnership. We have about 130 students enrolled in MCIW and MCIJ in Jessup, and those students are pursuing a bachelor's degree in American Studies. And I will pass it to Karen. Again, I think I did that last time.
You did. Good morning, everyone. I'm Karen Esterick. I work in primarily HR, but also in higher education and prison as an advocate. I'm also formerly incarcerated. I was fortunate enough to start my college degree as a GPEP student at the Maryland Correctional Institution for Women back in 2012 when GPEP was just getting started. And I am still pursuing my education now. And I will pass it to John.
Good morning, everybody. This is John Feaster, Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Maryland Department of Labor, Division of Workforce Development and Adult Learning. I currently oversee the Adult Education Program, Workforce Development Program, and Correctional Education Program, along with monitoring and compliance at the Division of Workforce Development and Adult Learning. It's certainly a pleasure to be on this call. And Stephen, so you know, I will be inviting our Director of Correctional Education to join these calls for subsequent meetings. So again, pleasure to meet everybody.
Thank you. You want to introduce somebody, John?
Sorry about that. Alyssa.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Fio. I'm an education attorney at the Maryland Office of the Public Defender, formerly spent 20 years at Disability Rights Maryland, and work with kids who are obviously impacted by the juvenile system and also the adult system. And so I'm very happy to be participating and appreciate the opportunity. I will pass it to Judge DeSimone.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark DeSimone. I am a judge of the Circuit Court for Baltimore County, and I serve as the representative of the Maryland Judiciary in this commission. I believe why the Chief Justice appointed me to this is what he knew is that I had spent 18 years, almost 18 years in the appellate division of the Office of the Public Defender, where virtually all my clients were incarcerated in DFC. He also knew I now have 18 years on faculty at University of Maryland School of Law. What he didn't know is that my father taught in the college programs at Jessup back in the 80s, and that my uncle taught welding in the institutions for over 30 years. And so I had that personal background to share. Obviously, I'm a little limited because I have some ethical limitations as to what I can and can't do in this, but for way of background, I do share that with the group. It's
Thank you.
wonderful to meet everyone.
Thank you. And welcome.
I'm sorry, Doctor.
No, I said welcome. Thank you. Go ahead and introduce somebody.
I am Tech Stupid, and everyone on my screen's already been introduced. Did you call it Doctor? Who should go next?
Ainsley, if you can see everybody and nobody's introducing, go ahead and do it for us, please.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. My name is Ainsley, and I'm the staff for this commission over at GoCap. Jocelyn, if you want to go.
Oh, whoop. Hello, everyone. You would think that, 2025, I'd know how to get my mic together. So, hello, my name is Jocelyn. I am Delegate Simpson's Chief of Staff. Delegate Simpson is currently in caucus right now, but she sends her warm regards and appreciation for everything that you all are doing right now. Yesterday, we actually had our substance abuse awareness rally, and so she's really focused on, just doing as much legislation as possible, especially sitting on the Judiciary Committee. We also have our intern Kavya with us, who will be taking notes for us as I need to step away and handle things. Session ends pretty soon, so we're trying to get as much done as possible. But anything you all need, any questions that you all have, we are happy to answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does
Ainsley?
Mika want to go next?
I'm sorry, did you say Ramika?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ramika Robinson. I am with GPEP. I have been with GPEP with Goucher College now for the last 8 years. I currently serve as the Director of Continuing Education and Professional Advancement for our students. Similar to Karen's story, I started GPEP in 2012 when it first was initiated behind the walls at MCIW. Was a part of the first cohort of 15 students. Today, I am proud to report that I am expected to graduate in May. And life after a bachelor's degree looks like a master's in women's and gender studies, thanks to the liberal arts experience that I've had here at Goucher. The work, I've served in various roles with GPEP, and this is the most rewarding work that I've ever been a part of. And I say this often, but this work is my why. So thank you for having me. Thank you for creating space for me to be here. I truly appreciate it.
Welcome.
Does Amanda want to go next?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Oh, no, it is working. Amanda Owens. I am a program officer with the ABLE Foundation in Baltimore City, and my area of focus is criminal justice and substance use disorder treatment. So good to be here.
Perfect. And then Caitlin.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Caitlin Quigley. I am the coordinator of policy initiatives in the Division of Student Support and Federal Programs at MSDE. I am standing in today for Mary Gable, who's our Assistant State Superintendent. Unfortunately, she was triple booked this morning. We have some fires to put out here, as you may imagine, but I am grateful to have the opportunity to be here with you all today.
Thank you.
Perfect. And then I think the last person is Jamel Freeman, who I think he is calling in and he needs to be made a contributor. So he just needs to accept that invitation. So he can't speak right now, but hopefully he'll be able to jump in later. Jamel Freeman is a formerly incarcerated student who he's about to get his master's of social work later this month. So we're proud of him. And I believe that's it.
Thank you. And I think that this introduction has served another purpose that I didn't even think about as much, but I do occasionally, is how many people we have on this commission who have experienced life behind bars and come out and just become terrific people. And it's a testimony to what we do and what we can do and why we need to expand our programs and our reach with correctional education. So I thank everybody for introducing themselves. Then I we need to approve the minutes. Nobody objected or made any more additions to the minutes, and I hope everybody got copies, and if not, just let Ainsley know. We also have the transcripts, written transcripts of everything if you want to do it verbatim. We even have video, and I've gone over some of them to pick up on nuances of things people have said, and those are all available through Ainsley, are they all on the Dropbox mostly?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So if anybody wants to catch up on previous meetings or have any questions, you can go and avail yourselves of that resource. So without any other more discussion, do I hear approval, a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting? Okay, I have a Gordon. Second, anybody raise your hand or just say aye? Okay, Andrea. So with that, our minutes are approved, and so we'll go on to the visits. So Ainsley, do you want to talk about the visits coming up? I think people received that as well, but here it is. Go ahead.
Yes. So we have a couple of correctional institution visits coming up. If you indicated you were interested in attending these correctional institution visits based on everybody's availability and the if they wanted what visits they wanted to go to, we assigned people to visits. We still have a couple of spots left, so if you do want to be a part of any of these visits, feel free to let us know. But let us know like by the end of the day. And if you did get an email about an invite to any of these visits, please email this email that I'm going to put in the chat of your name, date of birth, and driver's license. That will just help us, get you approved through the security so we can all get in. So MCI, we're going to MCIW and JCI on April 25th, MCTC and RCI on May 5th, ECI on May 19th. And we're going to be, observing classes, talking to students, talking to teachers, talking to correctional officers, doing site visits, so walking around just to get a feel of the institution and how classes are running, if there's, available space that's not being utilized for programs. So we're super excited. But yeah, please email me if you want to join on any of these visits, and email your driver's license, first name and last name, and your birthday to that email I put in the chat as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's there. We have more room, and then so that'd be terrific. That people can see firsthand and ask questions. I know I have a lot of questions that I'd like to. There are some agency has set out also with that regulations on what you can do when you come in and how you should dress or what you can't bring in, etc. You are able to bring in a pad and pencil or pen to take notes if you like, but obviously you can't bring your phones in and things like that. Anyway, I look forward to these visits very much, and hope many of you can join us.
And if you are planning on bringing a pencil or a pen or a non-wired notebook, also let us know so we can plan on that.
Yep. So, thank you. And if you have any other questions about the visits, Ainsley is our person to contact on that. And so we have, there's a bill that's still going through the legislature. It's in the Senate now. HB 877. It was introduced by Delegate Ampry to extend the life of this commission indefinitely. And so far, there's been no opposition to it. We have remained out of the discussion, and I mean, a delegate has put that in, and we did not ask him to do that. But so it may be that the timelines change. If this bill passes, timelines will change on some of our reporting that we would be doing. But in the meantime, we're going to stick with the schedule, which means there'll be an interim report in June, which Ainsley and I are starting to work on an outline, and we'll be sharing that over the next month. And then we would have a final report due by January 1st of next year. And it's my intention that we would do a final report maybe a month ahead of that, so that's time to give it to the delegates and the senators and everybody on this commission. So it could be discussed in the next legislative session. Are there any comments on this bill? Ainsley, do you have any other report? I tried to get some information yesterday, but everybody's so busy in Annapolis that I couldn't find anything from Delegate Ampry.
So it's currently in the so it passed the House. It's currently in the Judicial Proceedings Committee. It's supposed to be voted on today. I expect we're not going to get any opposition, and it's going to go on to the Senate. So we're going to cross our fingers.
Okay, very good. So now we have our next on our agenda, our work group updates, and I'm going to, Danielle Cox is not with us today. I did talk to her yesterday. She's at the annual COABE, Commission on Adult Basic Education meeting in Dallas. I think she's actually leaving to come back. She said she was going to try to call in, but she was really on her way to the airport, a late morning plane. So she can't join us, but we've been talking with her and getting information from her. So I'll come back to the ABGD Special Ed Committee. I'd like to turn it over to Andrea for the higher education report. And one question I have, is everybody getting the notes that we send back out? I mean, if we're not, let us know. And again, they'll be in the Dropbox. Anybody can access them at any time. We want total transparency of our meetings and accessibility for everybody. Andrea?
Sure, thank you. So the Higher Ed in Prison Work Group is actually meeting this afternoon. We have not met since the last commission meeting, so I don't have a major update on what we've been talking about. I will briefly just mention the areas that we're having conversations about that we're hoping to include in the report. So our priority areas are funding for the programs, space, technology, and incentives. Those are the 4 areas that we've been focused on. I don't want to give an overview of those. They're in the minutes from last time because we spent probably a lot of time at our last commission meeting talking about those 4 areas. Because we have Secretary Rai on the call, I will just mention one thing about the funding because we'll talk about it this afternoon at 1. But the funding, like the conversations around funding have been about how incarcerated students can access state aid. All of our incarcerated students attend college and prison through federal Pell Grants and private funding, and none of the programs have really tapped into utilizing state aid. I think for a while, a lot of us were under the impression that incarcerated students were ineligible for state aid, but we've learned that that's not actually true. So we are just having these conversations about, can they access the existing scholarship and grant programs that are available through MHEC? And we're having conversations about perhaps creating a tuition waiver program specific for incarcerated students. The funding conversation is tricky because obviously the state is cutting a lot of things. So asking the state for money for higher ed in prison is probably not going to happen this year. We will talk about it in the report. We have to, but asking for the state to contribute is unlikely to happen. So anyway, we are looking at MHEC and looking at the possibilities for our students accessing state aid if needed. And the conversation is around this has to do with the fact that Pell Grants don't cover full tuition. It's really difficult for new programs to start up when there's all these additional costs of providing higher ed in prison when Pell Grants don't cover everything. And then just the climate of whether or not at some point in the future our students might be restricted to Pell Grants, to accessing Pell Grants again. Hopefully not. There's really no conversation about that right now, but there's a lot of unknowns. So I'll just leave that there. Again, we meet as a subgroup, I think 1 o'clock, Ainsley, or is it 2 o'clock? It's 1 o'clock. So we'll be talking in detail about our priority areas and just an announcement about events coming up for higher ed in prison this weekend. Bowie State is having a HBCU summit on higher ed in prison. It's actually the first one in the country. So they're leading that effort this weekend. It's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I know a few people on this call are attending that, and that's led up by Dr. Charles Adams, who's on our commission, not here today because probably doing a lot of work to get ready for their event tomorrow. And then next week, the Alliance for Higher Ed in Prison is hosting their national conference in New Orleans. That's Thursday and Friday next week. And again, a few people on this call are attending that meeting. So I think these are two great opportunities for all of us who are going to learn a lot about best practices in other states, and hopefully we'll bring back some information to this group on higher ed in prison. Oh, great. Thanks, Ainsley. Ainsley put information about the Bowie Summit in the chat if you want to attend. I think you can still register. Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you. That was a very good report, a very good summary. I just want to highlight a couple of things. One is Pell Grants were restored during the first Trump administration, ironically, because we fought for years on Capitol Hill. And part of that had to do with Jared Kushner's father having been incarcerated in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and he became an advocate, and that spilled over into the White House. So I'm hoping that that sentiment still is there for maintaining support for Pell Grants for incarcerated folks. Who knows what's going to happen though. Also I want to note that a lot of you might not be aware that Maryland's one of the few states that doesn't really give any money, state money. Most states give some amount in some way or another, or give aid, much like Andrea is talking about the possibility of scholarships and things. A number of other states are doing that. So I mean, we could go on about this, but I think we need to appreciate, and we'll see in some of the data that we don't know quite, we were going to have a discussion about ABE, GED, and high school diplomas and people who qualify for college and how many there are, et cetera. But there's a crucial link here, and right now Dollar runs the correctional education programs separate from the higher education programs, which are coordinated by public safety and Danielle Cox is the person, and she's on the commission, but she can't be with us today. So I'll leave it at that. And you go to the career technology and workforce. Is Diana Bailey with us?
Good morning. Good morning.
You didn't get a chance to introduce yourself, I think. So go ahead.
Well, that's all right, because I'm just serving as chair liaison to the work group. So good morning, everyone. I'll just give you a brief update of what we've been doing. We have been meeting monthly like everyone else. I think we have a couple new members that are representing other offices, so we're glad to have them and their input. And Ainsley will send out those other work group lists if you want. Someone's there from Danielle's office as well to represent her when she's not available. But just as a summary of what we've been still looking at, frankly, as new information and data was coming in, we shared that with the work group. Some of the patterns that we saw was that, for example, clearly we're dealing with the staffing challenges, particularly as it relates to occupational instructors or reentry instructors or transition instructors. They're called different things. They're funded by different agencies. So those are clearly having an impact on the enrollment data. For the programs that are in CTE, those require a GED or high school diploma equivalency for access. So as you would imagine, the trickle effect of not having a GED obviously impacts that enrollment. We also saw a lot of the data that showed those people who were lucky enough to get into a correct CTE program or into a transitional class. We had a number of certificates that are going up, which is good. But we are still seeing that we're continuing to have significant barriers to employment. Part of that's within the community, part of that's probably employer attitude. But having done some of this work myself, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that in terms of staffing, we do not anymore have, for the most part, an employment specialist or a career services provider that does that liaison from the correctional facility to the world of work or to the workplace. So it's difficult for the returning citizen to deal with all those barriers to employment that they have. So one of the other things that we noticed, this was brought up several times for the folks from Maryland Correctional Industries, they have a targeted workforce, of course, but even with those special areas and unique skills that the MCE graduates have, they don't know really the employment outcomes because they don't have access to the parole and probation data. So one of the recommendations that the work group has, even at this point, is that we don't know for many population groups what the employment outcomes are. So I hope that the commission would consider reaching out to parole and probation so we could access that outcome data as well. And I think that is primarily, let's see if I missed anything else. Again, we're still looking at the data, but we kind of know what to do in terms of best practices. It's elevating the access points to what current tech ed programs are available and what are the workforce connections, where the employer connections, and where the jobs are. And what I worry about is clearly, even with some of the technical fields, with a sudden surge of federal employees, although they don't have the background, that's another group that our people are going to be competing with. So how do we get them the technical skills and the reentry skills that they need, so that when there are positions available, they will be ready and trained and ready for the workforce. So I think it's another barrier that we're going to have to deal with and be honest about it. So anyway, John, I see that you're here this morning. Is there anything that I missed that you wanted to add? John's a member of our work group.
John Griffith or John Feaster?
Griffin.
Oh, you're talking to me.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Was there on our group? Anything I missed?
No, not really. I
Okay.
think your summary, pretty much covered it all. As someone with lived experience, I can tell you that, the staffing shortages are a factor. I mean, there are guys who are just missing out on opportunities, myself included. I mean, I was not given any transitional help at all when I was released. So that's an issue, and it's something that is going to be, I think, difficult to resolve.
Well, and the thing is that we talked about, but that we don't have numbers to back it up. But clearly the cost benefit of not providing these services is that, we're looking at the investment both in the people and the programs. But without some of those transitional supports, then we're not using our money wisely. So it's spend now or spend wherever we spend, but it's so critical. So any questions from the commission that I can try to answer? So I did want to follow up, Steve, though. Have we reached out to parole and probation specifically for employment outcome data? I just don't remember.
We are going to do that. I'm glad you raised that question, because I was going to highlight that. So thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, that's very crucial. I mean, these people who work parole and probation are absolutely crucial for helping people transition and finding jobs, and we need to get data from them. Also, we had hoped to have Maryland longitudinal data today, but Danielle, they haven't given Danielle the right to release it generally, so we've been sharing it informally. And what we're finding out from the data we do have, and that Maryland longitudinal data is putting in work compared to wages of people who are incarcerated who now show up, on the records for employment that labor has been keeping, that if people have transition skills, they do better.
Right.
If they have a GED, if they have CT, certificates, they do better than people who don't. So the data that we're beginning to collect, and we will pass that on to you as soon as we are able to release it. It's very encouraging. So for everything that Diane said can be backed up already with some initial data.
And I don't know whether it's being collected now, but when we had some special funding, the Maryland Department of Labor, we had partnerships that we had designated career service providers in the regional one-stops, that those people were providing some of that transitional services. But that's been a while ago, so I don't know if labor is collecting anything. But the other trauma with that is if a individual goes into a one-stop career center, like at Mondawmin Mall or wherever, they may or may not identify having been incarcerated. So in that sense, it's difficult to identify unless there's some sort of transition. So, but again, that would be helpful. Maybe they're doing more than we realize they are, or maybe this is where a recommendation would come in that, again, related to the career services providers, that could be again another emphasis.
I think John Feaster, if you just sort of popped up on the screen, I think he wants to say something, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that those services are still being offered in our American Job Centers, especially over at Mondawmin and Eastside in Baltimore City. And the person that you were referencing is called a reentry navigator. So those staff are very specifically designated to help provide those services to those who are formerly incarcerated. But just to add, our entire staff in both of those centers are trained in order to be able to help those who are formerly incarcerated with a variety of workplace readiness skills and transition services, including, a variety of things such as, again, basic job readiness skills, financial literacy, really the whole gamut of all the programs that we offer behind the fence currently in transition.
Do you have data as well, or some idea of the numbers in that, of how many people you've served? Maybe not just at Mondawmin, but across the region?
So I don't have them memorized, but we do designate that in Maryland. Yeah, when we register everybody who we provide service to, we absolutely register them in the Maryland Workforce Exchange, and we have the ability to pull those numbers should you want to know how many people
we
are
can
serving.
request? Is that something we could request as well?
It is, but yes, yep.
Oh, okay.
Send it to me. Send me the request, and I'll make sure we get it for you.
Diane, on behalf of the commission, send John Feaster the request and copy everybody on the commission so that we have that, because we're going to be doing the same thing with parole and probation as a commission. We're going to say, can we get this data? What we're finding out, I think, and some of it is in the report that we received from Dollar, that we don't know because a lot of it hadn't been reported in the past. And one of the main reasons Dollar took over was to provide jobs, but we had a privacy issue with Social Security numbers and such. And there's ways to solve that. At least we can get real numbers without having to identify people. So we need to work on that as a commission and make that as a strong recommendation that this goes forward.
And I do want to add that, as Diana mentioned, it is a data point that is self-attested. So you are exactly right. We require or we rely on those folks to self-attest. And what I will tell you is that the stigma around self-attestation, most of them do not self-attest, and everyone has access to those services. So again, even if I were to be able to provide, or even if I were to provide you with the number of people who self-attested to taking advantage of those services, it is not a reliable number, very specifically to how many people we actually serve, post incarceration in our American Job Centers. And I still want to roll it back a little bit too, just reminding everybody the scope of this, I believe, is prison education delivery reform. And as we start talking about reentry and things like that, at least at the Maryland Department of Labor, it's in an entirely different office. So the Office of Workforce Development is who runs reentry services, not correctional education. And they're two completely different programs with hundreds of people on either side of that divide.
Right. And so I think what maybe the task of this commission through this committee here is to find ways to suggest that we get this data and through other ways. I mean, we can identify people with wages and coming out and who are still up in the wages that are being taxed. And there are different ways to identify formerly incarcerated people who are logically not willing to say much about their experience so that they get a job because they know that the roadblocks out there. So
the one good thing about the wage data, though, Stephen, is the fact that we know exactly who is currently incarcerated and who was, and we're able to run that information against the wages of those individuals in the public after the fact. But unfortunately, the folks who volunteer to come in, again, post release, those numbers are a little less flexible.
We will come back to this issue because it's a big one, because it hits at the heart of whether or not we're being effective with our programs, and whether the research has shown in the past, particularly from Rand Corporation, that a dollar spent gets back $4 in future savings, and et cetera. That education does make a difference, but we need to put a tag on it in numbers for the state of Maryland, and let's take that opportunity as a commission to work as one of those recommendations. Most of the things that both Andrea and Diana have raised as issues, I want to put into the interim report. We don't have to put solutions into the interim report. We can say issues we've come up with, important points we've come up with that need to be looked at in depth. And then maybe over the next several months before the final report, we can put a little meat on those bones with something more specific as we work as a commission on reform and stuff. I don't need to remind you that we can't put a dollar tag on it because the legislature is not going to entertain, more money right now, but we certainly can recommend things that we can do administratively with what we have. The Maryland longitudinal data works on the wage issue, and I'm really waiting to get permission to show some of that to you, and we'll share that with you as soon as we can, because it gets at bigger numbers that are reliable. That for if are people getting jobs, and who are they? What programs did they go through? At least so. Anyway, the next section is there anything else on career technology and workforce development? I think you guys, Diana, did a great job, and Andrea in raising issues, but got a lot more to come. So we have the ABE, GED, special education. We've kind of lumped that together as one committee. We don't have a chair per se. Danielle's been working hard, giving us information on stuff from public safety. Alyssa on special ed, and Ainsley and I have been going back and forth with the ABE GED data. So let me start with this. We have there's a discussion next on the agenda on the report that we received from Director Rubin to questions that we put out. Many of them came from adult basic ed GED folks on a committee, as well as higher education and career tech. So when we get to that, I want to just go through some of those responses and have people respond as well. But it's very crucial to me, and this is from my personal experiences, having done the work that John's doing and that Rochelle is doing in my history, that we get data on what's going on, real-time data, what's going on in the programs, because we're spread all over the state, and not every institution can offer all the programs that are needed. Some people need to be moved around. We need to measure our effectiveness of our programs, et cetera. So getting daily, and I'm talking about basic information, attendance, enrollment, whether or not school is actually happening. Are there closures? Reasons why, and not all of it. If there are closures, many times it has to do with something that's beyond everybody's control, and sometimes it's beyond dollars control because public safety has staffing issues or whatever. But we need to find out in order to look at each institution and see whether or not we're being effective. John mentioned low-hanging fruit in one of the earlier discussions. Low-hanging fruit has to be one of the key things is, as you said, seat time or chair time. The amount of time that somebody spends in school. If they're not going to school because of closures, if they go out for a week and they come back, they've got to catch up. It's just they don't pick up, as you know, people in the learning process, especially those who don't have a lot of skills. You really have to have consistent, regular classes to move them on. So we need to know, is school being held, how many hours people are going generally, and if there are reasons why they're not, we need to make some recommendations as a commission to looking into those. I mean, some of them may be beyond our control immediately because of staffing issues, but we need data, and principals need data to help their teachers, with their curriculum, and central office with training, and maybe even sending students to different places. We might have a waiting list at one place, but not at another. And if they're at the same level of security, then you can ask corrections to transfer them to a place where they can access. So this data is really necessary, so we'll come to the discussion on that and raise some questions. But you can't run programs without real-time data, and as John has mentioned, it's not always so easy to get it, and I'm sure you'll have some comments as we go through the report. I'd like. Also, the other thing about the ABE GED, we have a discussion going back and forth, and at this meeting, we've talked about it. How many GEDs we have are occurring every year. They're really high school diplomas in Maryland. They get a certificate of high school completion, and that in the corrections arena allows them to go to Maryland Correctional Enterprises for a job. It allows them to apply for career technology courses and for higher education. A high school diploma or a GED from outside before you come in, or a GED, it's necessary to get these programs. So how many people are completing the GED that's a big question. We have some data indicating that maybe of all the eligible population, eligible for the mandatory population, meaning those who are serving 18 months or more must go to school if they don't have a high school diploma. Of all those, the numbers were in question, but maybe 50,000 people we looked at over the period of time, maybe 10% are getting their high school diploma while incarcerated. And we really need to bring those numbers up because 90% are going out without doing it. Those are raw numbers, and we have to really get some fine tuning on that. But we don't have enough. Maybe we don't have enough students for college or CT or availability for Maryland Correctional Enterprises because not enough people are getting a high school diploma. It used to be high school diploma was the absolute base credential to get a job, but we all know now that that's just one of the ways that people need to prepare themselves for this job market. You know, they really need technology, they need career training, and our population needs very strong transition training, as we've seen. So we want to look at all this data and see where we really are and make some recommendations. We'll get to that in a minute. So I'd like Alyssa to talk about special ed, and we'll get back to it also during the report that we're going to look at briefly in a few minutes. Okay.
So I just had a chance this morning to look at the data, the responses to the questions. So I did a very quick cursory review. I appreciated kind of the information, the substantive responses. So some of the questions we asked were, when is the process manual for special education going to be completed? It hadn't been completed in, I can't even remember, was it like 10 years, 15 years? It was a very long time. And I said that's going to be ready by the end of May. So things are, I'm assuming these things were all, I know they were all in process, but it's good that, there's a deadline there. Also, we asked about whether MSD has done any compliance reviews, which they're required by law to do. And interestingly, there's another compliance happening between March and May of this year. Maybe that was scheduled beforehand. And so I think there's questions about what will come out of that. No violations were found previously, they reported. The interesting thing is they did give us data about the number of students. We asked for a 2-year period. Within that 2-year period, there were 259 students who were eligible for special education. And to be eligible, you have to have been identified prior to coming into the system. It is interesting and actually consistent with my individual casework that students who are classified as OHI, other health impairment, was the highest represented disability coding, and that really represents students who have ADHD. And so that's interesting. There are kids or individual students with intellectual disabilities, as well as emotional disabilities. When you go back down and look at the testing, it looks like 42 students within that 2-year period attempted at least one subject test. 32 passed at least one, which is a good passing rate for the individual testing, I think. But what's interesting is that only 8 passed the GED in that 2-year period out of the 259. And I'm sure there are many factors as to why that is, maybe the time period. Once they hit the end of the school year, which they turn 21, they're no longer eligible for special education services. So maybe they went on to earn their GED, maybe, I don't know. And we did talk, obviously we can't control this. We did raise the issue in a prior meeting about that the GED is difficult, that for students with disabilities, some students will never be able to pass the GED, and there are no other options where the federal law states that they must be able to earn a high school diploma. And in Maryland, the GED does qualify as a high school diploma, but there is no other path forward, meaning you can't continue to earn credits as if you were in a comprehensive high school or in a high school public setting, and earn your high school degree that way. And so that's a barrier. Ainsley did send us some information from, what was it, the Correctional Education Association, which made a recommendation that students with disabilities actually have an option to pursue either a regular high school course track or the GED, which is not the framework that we have here in Maryland. And whether this group, I'm just on the advisory, committee, work group part, so not part of the official commission, but whether there's a recommendation that Maryland consider that as a structural barrier to address. I'd leave it to you all, but I would certainly recommend that.
Could I chime in just for a quick second? And I know that I'm not on your committee, and I know that what I'm saying is not obviously etched in stone. And if you've already talked about this in your group, I sincerely apologize for bringing it up. But I just think like some recommendations when it comes to considering students pursuing their GED behind the wall. Two things that we don't quite consider, and you talked a little bit about this, is accommodations. We have some students that have learning disabilities accommodations. I think when students are initially signed up to take GED courses inside the prison, they should have the opportunity to go through some sort of assessment so that we can kind of gauge where they are. And we will have the data to meet them where they are first and foremost. And then also thinking about college and prison, and then also GED opportunities inside the prison. I know that students have the opportunity to have the one-on-one with professors in the classroom. And then outside of the classroom, we offer study halls, right? And what I don't see with the GED program is after class, they don't have the time or space to study beyond the classroom, and have someone there on staff supporting them through that process. So does that look like working with, and I met two, PD Green was one. Meredith and I did a presentation with Danielle at COEB in Dallas, and PD Green was there. I did not know they offered a service. But even thinking about services outside the classroom, bringing in other partners that are doing this work that could provide access to resources and tutors so that students have space and time to study beyond the classroom, because a lot of times that's just what students they need. They need that one-on-one time with someone that can sit down and walk them through processes after classes. So again, I do apologize if you've already talked about that, but I couldn't help but not mention that as an excuse.
This is perfectly appropriate. This is what this commission meeting is for. We bring other questions to the committee or clarifications or some things that nobody's thought of. I will highlight one of the things you mentioned, PD Green, and for those who don't know that, I'm on their national board. PD Green is a tutoring group, so to speak. That's the briefest way to put it. It started 10, 15 years ago, founded out of Princeton University folks. And they, what they do, they ask college students to give a semester and go and work in a jail or a prison. And I worked with them to get PD Green started in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. And I worked personally at Howard County with them as a tutor myself and then supervising some of these college students. I can't tell you what a big difference that made. Just at Howard County, we had 4 or 5 college students. They committed a semester. They came in regularly. They tutored people who were in class, and the GED rate went way up at the Howard County Jail during that time. Then, of course, COVID came. The tutoring from trained tutors who come in and are cleared, so they don't come in for other reasons. That's a big problem at corrections. People volunteer and come in and sometimes for other reasons, but these are people who want to do some good and are trained and screened. And I want to talk to John and other people about PD Green at some point, bringing them in. Jeff Abramovich is the director, and would be very interested in helping out in Maryland. Some of it has to do with getting some funding to bring these folks in, but we also used to do a lot more tutoring in Maryland than I think we do now. So we had a whole bank of 1,400 people who are still behind bars tutoring other people. They got their GEDs, became part of a tutoring corps. That was very effective, and a number of states, including Maryland, were recognized for that in the past as examples of excellent practices. So what you bring up is very important. What happens after they leave school? What happens back on the housing units? Are there support? Is there an atmosphere in the facility for education? You know, some dorms are put together for people just to be in school or just be in college, and that has an atmospheric change for those folks. So, so I'll leave it at that. But I really wholeheartedly support your comments on that. So, can we turn to the report that we had asked that for some clarifications on some more questions. These questions we sent to Director Rubin were rather lengthy, but they came out of the 3 committees. And so I don't want to go through them in great detail. I want you to read them for next meeting. I think the next meeting we want to discuss this data in detail. And we also want to discuss information we're getting from state directors on the delivery service, on delivery models from different states. But let's look briefly. One of the questions that we asked, for example, and this is number 1, and right from Director Rubin's report, it has to do with closures and attendance. And we were very keen on, do we have real-time data? So I want you to look at this, I don't think we need to have a big discussion right now, but we really need to look at this and have a discussion on it. We do have acknowledged closure problems, and we do have issues of, you know, are the waiting lists being kept, and how they're being used, and a question about whether or not there's some central point for putting all these waiting lists together, or they just exist at the institutional level. These are things we need to discuss. So you can see there are some points there where some data is not collected, and it wasn't collected, and now it's being collected. So I don't want to, unless you have some really salient points right now to ask about this. I just want to go through these responses quickly. So is there anything on this chart here? I mean, I hate to throw this thing at you and then ask you to comment on it if you haven't had much chance, but go ahead.
Sorry, I'd really like to quickly jump in for the closures and attendance. If you're not a state of Maryland employee, I don't think that you can access that document. So what I've done is I've just exported it and put it in the data Dropbox. And then once you open that, then you're going to be able to see that chart. So there's just an extra step if you want to look at that data, but it is in that data Dropbox and you're able to access it.
That's terrific. So those who are statisticians will love this and eat it up and tear it apart upside down and backwards. And I hope somebody on our group is that person. I'm looking at John, for example, John Griffin, and to ask some more questions on this. But let it be that, unless John Feaster wants to say something, we have a lot of issues here to discuss. And John said at one of the meetings that I went over the notes, and that we have it's somewhat piecemeal how we're doing this, and we need to figure out a better way. And so John, do you have any comments on this particular one?
Just completely piecemeal for what it's worth, and for everybody here on the call. There's no database that we collect this information in. We use Microsoft Excel just because of the limitations of the database that we have. I will say that we are actually putting out a procurement to upgrade our database so that we can not only collect this information in a more centralized fashion, but also be able to analyze the data that we have as well. But that's 12 months away, possibly, if the procurement goes through, for a company to actually build that for. So just letting you know, it's something that's in play. But again, this is Excel spreadsheets, held by individual principals at individual schools due to technology limitations that we have. And on top of that, we also can't use something simple like Google Sheets because we don't have internet access behind the fence as well. So everybody has to keep this information locally at their individual prisons.
Okay. We'll scroll down and look for, we have some comments on waiting lists that that are very, important. How many people are waiting for programs, and if somebody's supposed to go to school, for example, and they're doing 2 years a sentence, or they're mandatory because it's a minimum if you have 18 months or more. How long do they have to wait on waiting lists? I mean, are they getting into school? Special ed, supposedly, those students get in immediately because they have an identified plan and federal law and all that. But there are a lot of students who might not get in for a while, and so these waiting lists are important to look at. The closures are really really concerning because if you look around the institutions, and there's some other data sheets that gave us this 20 to 80% that we were looking at, that much closure. I mean, some places RCI admittedly has been closed for months, and there's no school going on because of one reason or another. In some places, some of it's just plain old correctional staffing. Some of it's due to maybe there's not a teacher or whatever. So we have to look at that. I mean, seat time, as John Feaster said, is one of the most important things we need to have happen. People need to be sitting in school, going to school, and if there's closure, it's not happening for a lot of people. The fourth one, we had this comment about the people qualifying for career technology, post-secondary education, job training in the Maryland Correctional Enterprises, having to have a high school diploma. And so we focused in on that question. So these are some of the answers. This is one of the answers we have. Rochelle Rubin is not sure of this statistic, but she explains, the mandatory education thing here. So I think we need to look into that some more. With school closures are high for a number of reasons, some of which are officers vacancies, teacher vacancies, staff leaves. And we need to take a little better look at that and figure out if there's anything that can be done. I know if Danielle were here, she would say she's trying to get institutions to prioritize. If they have to close a post, that school would be the last post to be closed. And so is that happening? I mean, we're going to try to see if we can get more information on that. The number 6, we're trying to look at reports, at more information than there has been in the annual reports for CEC. And so I'm hoping that actually there's a CEC meeting next month. And maybe John, we could, I don't want to get on the agenda or anything, but I'd be very interesting to see what they're talking about in terms of data collection. And I think there's a lot more data personally that could be put out in the annual report than is put out. I mean, we have completions, we have, numbers of students, we have special ed report, but there's a lot of detail. I think that this commission could say we'd like to see more regularly put out by the. So where are we? So
Stephen, I'll also add that CEC participation is available to the public as well. So if anybody wants to participate or view or attend that meeting, it's available to the public.
Do we have a general invite that's being sent out so everyone in this commission could, if they wanted to?
First, actually, we have it listed on our website quarterly with a link to click if you would like to participate.
Okay, well, Ainsley will just put it up there. So we'll try to send it out to the commission in another note, before maybe the next week or so, just so that they know and can participate. So where are we here with the? This is special education questions that Alyssa has asked quite a bit, and so you're going so fast I can't read that fast. So where are we in the what's the number we're at, Ainsley? You're just scrolling through here.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through the special education stuff since we talked about that, but there's a couple questions. All right, now to transition.
Okay, so we have information on transition, and we had a lot of questions on the numbers of vacancies, and so we've got some answers here from Rochelle Rubin on some of the questions we had about what's available in the library, what kind of help there is for like Career One Stop, et cetera, which all gets back to the Career Tech Committee that Diana's chairing. We don't, to stop a second for the library, we don't really have anybody on this committee who's very much involved with libraries. And so, I don't know, maybe in our visits, we can take a little bit of a look at the places we visit. Because I think we need to get a better handle on these programs that are available in the library and what they are and how often people are going in and whether the computers are working, et cetera, at some of the sites, which is another question that somebody brought up before. So, and then, you know, what is the curriculum outline? And so we have a bit of an answer. Then there's a click, you can do course outline and go to reentry employment resources and look at what the course involves in its 40 hours. Computer literacy plans for reentry prep. There's a lot of information there. And so where are we at can you scroll to the next one? Let's see. And then we wanted a list of all the programs that exist. So that's in the report at various institutions. You can see that, for example, just scroll down a little bit, that we have one place for auto collision and repair and refinish, it's MCTC, but automotive technology exists at several institutions. And so we'll be taking a look at some of those. And you can go through Barbara Stylist is an example of something that changed in the past. You know, for years, people could go, women could go to cosmetology course and the men could go to barbering, and they couldn't take the final exam because the barbering trade, which is run by the Cosmology Board, I think it used to be anyway, maybe that's not the exact name, but of the governing board, but they wouldn't allow ex-offenders to get licenses. That has changed. And as you know, those places are very important community centers for a lot of people. You know, barbershops and hair salons. So I'm so glad to see that open up to formerly incarcerated people. But we have a lot of other roadblocks in other career centers too, and career occupations as well. But we can't. It would be nice to be able to open up. What else do we have? I'm going to scroll a little.
I believe that's it.
That's it. Okay, so this is a rather lengthy report. Are there any general questions on this report right now? I do want you to read it, and I do want you to bring up any questions, and particularly in your areas of expertise. It's very important that we get basic data. If we're going to make recommendations, we just can't make them out of the blue. We really need to have information to make recommendations that have some basis in reality. So we'll probably be following up on this more. And as I said, we're going to Maryland longitudinal data. We'll be sharing that, and we're going to do our visits and try to share information on that. And so that's a report from, and I appreciate Director Rubin for answering those questions. And so we're, John Feaster, do you have any more comments on the report that Director Rubin sent in for us?
No, not at this time. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to gather that information, and again, a rather ad hoc way considering our technology limitations. So thank you for your patience.
Yeah, I think as you pointed out some of the problems in getting this information, and there's one thing about how much information we have, and there's another about what the roadblocks are to getting them. So it's important that we, if we say we need something, that we also say what is the state of the art of getting that data and what are the issues. So I appreciate some of your comments on collecting, you know, like for example, waiting lists and stuff like that. So
sure. And to be honest with you, on your tour, so for all of you who are going to participate in the upcoming tours, I think that you should pay special attention to the state of the technology in the prisons, and just keep in mind that there are significant investments required, significant investments needed to really bring us up to speed in the technology. department.
Right. I'm hoping that the college programs are going to spur more of more of a growth of the use of technology in hybrid situations like they do in the public schools that could be so helpful for us. There's no reason why we have to worry about the internet behind bars. I mean, that can be guarded against, and there can be all kinds of vibrant programming going on, interactive outside with the professors and stuff. And then within the schools, a lot more communication between teachers and students. Be able to go back to do work in the cells and put it on a computer or send it to a central file for. I mean, there's a lot of things we could be doing, and that are just being done as everyday stuff in public schools. That aren't happening. Paper and pencil is no longer the way to go. I mean, we've got to have more than that. Ainsley, you want to talk very briefly about the delivery system, the correctional education delivery system? We put out a survey to the state directors. We got state directors of correctional ed. These would be directors. These are people who are the equivalent of Rochelle Rubin, who run the correctional education program in different states. We have interviewed 6 people already, 6 directors, and then we got, how many answers did we get, the responses so far from different states?
So we got about 11. I'm also wondering if Alyssa or Gordon want to speak. They both have their hands up.
Yes. Go ahead.
Gordon, why don't you go ahead? I'll go after you.
Okay, I just had a quick question. Listen to John bring it up. When we go on these visits to the institutions, we should be able to ask not only the staff, but the program participants as well, the incarcerated individuals and the correctional staff as well about the programs. Should we be worried about retaliation? Should we be worried about putting people on the spot in front of other people? Because most times when you go on these tours, the head person is standing over it, listening and waiting for somebody to mess up. And I've witnessed situations where they might not like what someone said and they found a reason to just change the job or get rid of them. So is this something that we need to be prepared for or not?
Well, I can speak from the state standpoint. I've been on, half a dozen of these tours all around the state at various institutions. And for the most part, not only are staff, but also incarcerated individuals, they're very transparent and very honest about what the situation is. And maybe it's because when labor visits, we're visiting from a place of we really want to help. We really want to find out where the investment is needed and how much is the investment. And then we can take that back and find out what's really needed. So we're not looking for, when labor goes out, we're not looking for a dog and pony show. And I think that we communicate as such. So hopefully that is something that is communicated. And Gordon, that's really a good point. Maybe whoever is leading this tour should lead with that messaging and communication.
I would like to request during this tour that, we can talk to anybody. And we haven't talked to, we don't have anybody on here from public safety, unfortunately, but I would say to beforehand that we're able to maybe go in a classroom and just talk to students alone, ask that the teacher and the administrator not be in the classroom, because I do take to heart what Gordon's saying, not because people are vindictive, but you don't want to get anybody in any trouble and you want people to open up. And I have all the faith in the world about people who are in the classroom, about their honesty and information that they will give us that we might not get elsewhere. That would be helpful. And so I would like very, very much that we have a period with students in classrooms. We're able to just, and we can ask when we get there, can we just talk to these students? Instead of, I don't want them to set up a class and then they go get all their favorite students, put them in. I want them to allow us to go in and just talk to, and the students would know that it doesn't go beyond that because we're outsiders and we're not going to share any individual names. Does that make sense? I mean,
Stephen, I can add a little bit to that. So what I will say is typically on these tours, the person that provides escort to the tour is usually like the assistant warden. And I'm not sure if they would allow the tour guests to be in a closed environment without security or their security escort. And to Gordon's point, the assistant warden is probably the person you absolutely don't want to talk bad around. So
Right.
I'm not sure what that looks like to make sure that you have an opportunity, because I'm 100% for it. I think that's a great idea. However, just I would be mindful of the fact that, you know, the person that's providing the escort is very specifically the person who Gordon may be worried about coming back to, I mean, possibly retaliating. Again, Gordon, I don't pretend to know what the culture is behind the fence, but it shouldn't be that way, but just keep that in mind when you go.
My experience in the past, and of course I was in the system and I even had a correctional officer's badge because I was sworn in at one point. And but so I would, when I go in, they'd give me a lot more leeway because I knew some of the people and they let me go here and there. And now that's many years ago, so they probably won't. But at Howard County, I was able to just to you know, sit with students without correctional officers always outside. There's going to be a correctional officer in the area, and I would make the request. I'm going to try to talk to public safety about that we could have a few moments with the officer outside or assistant warden outside or whoever, but that we could talk to people in the classroom. I'm not in any fear of any retaliation. I mean, I worked for years, and that's the last thing that was in my mind after I started. But I don't want people to close their mouth and not, you know. And then on the other hand, we're not going to take that information and rat on somebody. And, you know, we need to be, because that I don't know if it's going to work. It's laughing. What's up, Gordon?
I was just laughing because you used the term ratting. That's something real prevalent inside. It's just funny to me. Yeah.
I wonder where I got that term from. So, all right. So I Gordon, I know you're wanting to go on these on the visits as well. So you know, I appreciate you asking that question. So, all right.
And then I think we have Alyssa and then Ramika and Andrea. I'm totally happy to save the presentation on the survey results till next time. I don't think we'll get to it today, but I think that's fine.
I'll just say real quickly, and maybe these are issues that we can bring up in the smaller group, but I do think there's some questions that we asked that we don't have the answers to, and that's related to staffing and special ed certification, but I'll take a look at those before we meet again. I also just wanted to make sure that John Griffin's comment about the under 21 coordinator doesn't get lost in terms of like any recommendations, if that's something that's appropriate to recommend that gets reinstated. And then the other issue I just want to comment on, I know I'm learning a lot from just participating in this group, and don't assume to know everything that's happening and what is in fact possible. I know we are GED is it. But I do wonder if there is any understanding of the credit count that students have when they come into the system. And I've mentioned this before about having some clients who've only had one class to do, one class. Their birthday was in June and they got moved from YDC into the correctional facility, and boom, they're starting from beginning. And not just starting from beginning, but starting from a really, you know, hard place of having to pass all of those tests. And so I do wonder if there is any data related to credit counts of the individuals, not just special ed, but all the students coming in. I know that I represent a lot of overage, undercredited kids. So I'm assuming there's going to be, the majority might be undercredited. But I do think there is a lost opportunity for some kids who just need, and like in the juvenile system, with their juvenile detention, some of you might know this, you know, we have problems with that system, but they are on online, they use Apex or Admentum, which is an online program that allows students to access the curriculum, the high school curriculum, and pass through it and run through it at their own pace. And you can finish a course very quickly or not, depending on what your needs are. And for special education students, the supports and the accommodations go to working your way through that course. And like I was just in an IEP meeting for a kid who's at Baltimore County Detention Center, and he was accessing the course through Apex, lots of problems there, but I just wonder, is there data about credit count for students who are coming in? And I'm assuming there isn't, but I just wanted to ask if we know that.
Is somebody from DJS on I'm here on the meeting today, because we have a representative from Juvenile Services, and maybe they have an answer for that question, because
Well, the answer is credit count when they're in the adult facilities. When they come in, is there a review of their credit count? Yeah.
The reason I ask that is because is there a way that anybody goes and tries to link up what we have from, if they transfer from youth services to adult services, is that data, or is it just sealed? I mean,
I see what you're saying. Yeah, well, maybe YDC.
Yeah.
From that's Department of Correction. I mean, it is a Baltimore City school within the youth, within YDC, but I don't know the answer.
Yeah. Well, I want you to, these questions you just raised, I would really like you to put them in writing as a response to this report and give it back to us, because what do we need we've got a lot of good answers now, a lot of good information. What do we still need? I mean, the stuff you raise about people having to redo their whole high school education, they're almost done, and then they get in the adult system to start over with GED. That's got to be so discouraging for a person who struggled all their life to get through school. I mean, if there's something we could do, it requires maybe legislation, that might be something that ends up, to straighten out this GED high school diploma thing. I don't know, but we got to get that question out as an issue. So please write this stuff down and give it back to all of us, and we'll continue to work forward on special ed. It's very dear to me. It always has been as a reading teacher. So, okay. Who else has their hand up? I can't see the hands. Ainsley, anybody else?
Ramika and Andrea.
So I'm going to just be really brief here, because I feel like we can also talk about this in our subcommittees. But what I wanted to say is shout out to former Warden Brenda Shell and Margaret Chippendale. During their time, they brought in beautification of the environment inside the prison. So they had beekeeping program, they had a horticulture program. And so when I think about that, a past experience, and then I also think about the broken windows theory, right? And what that means. And also tying that into education. What would it look like for students to expand what they're learning experiences inside the classroom to outside the classroom? Which means that if a student is introduced to a bio course or an art course, a horticulture course, is there a possibility for them to bring the learning experiences that they've learned inside the classroom to inside the facility, right? Horticulture, the beautification of the prison campus. We all know that prison is a daunting place, right? And how does that boost the morale and shift the attitudes of people inside, right? If we have an art project, I know we put on an art exhibit where we invited people out to view the students' artwork after the semester was over. What does that look like inside the prison, creating murals of positivity around the environment, right? And so just thinking about like their experience, and also students having the ability to take their education and apply it to the optics inside the prison, so that they also feel like that they are not only being invested in, but they are invested into something, right? I just wanted to like highlight that, because and I'm also interested in that type of data, past wardens that have allowed such programming and things to happen inside the facility, and link that into infractions and what that looked like for students, right? And then current day, comparing that to what is being offered, if anything is being offered, and the type of services that are being offered and what that looks like. But I do feel like psychologically there is a lot to say about the broken windows theory and how your environment looks like. And if you have some control over what that looks like, who would be in a better position to turn that around other than the people that are inside the prison that have to look at these things every single day 24/7. So just, again, I could talk more about that, but along with education and morale and those type of things, I think it's important to at least mention.
Yeah, the atmosphere is extremely important. I've had the privilege. I said it's kind of an odd privilege, but I've probably been in a jail or a prison in every state in this country and many places around the world. And I got to the point where I can walk into a place and feel an atmosphere almost immediately. How clean it looks, how colorful it is. As the grounds look beautiful? Are people outside doing things? And it's very important. It's not directly involved with our programs, but it's an ancillary part of it. You know, I mean, we've had institutions in Hagerstown years ago, MCTC, one of the librarians' families were florists in Hagerstown. They brought in seeds and they brought in plants, and the whole place was just growing with, you know, stuff all over. And people were, when the people had visitors, they were able to pick flowers and give it to their wife that was visiting them, stuff like that. It made a big difference. The atmosphere was terrific. We've had things like that happen before. You know, what is the atmosphere? How positive it is. People can have experiences they might not ever have before. You know. Anyway, I hope if you have any good examples, like you mentioned wardens' names and projects, give it to us so we can take a look at and read it. You know, I mean, we could make a recommendation on atmosphere in schools and in the institution and how that plays into the education and people wanting to learn, you know. Okay, so anything you can help us is terrific there, because we're looking at nuts and bolts, maybe not looking at sometimes at the atmosphere, and that's also important.
So Andrea still has her hand up. I will just make a note that we are over time. So if you do need to leave, feel free.
So Andrea, and then we'll try to tie it up.
I just had one comment. I'd love to keep talking about what Ramika is talking about, but maybe we'll save that for our 1 o'clock meeting. We could expand on that. I just want you to think about when you do the correctional tour visits that you have them from 9 to 3. And if you want to observe and talk to all kinds of students, just be mindful of when programs operate. For the college programs at JCI, University of Baltimore and Bowie, and I think this might be true for Goucher, we operate starting at 2. So, and the GED programs end at, who knows, I think at JCI it might be before 12 or by 12. So just be mindful of the timing of things if you want to be able to like talk to all kinds of students. And I also just wanted to say that our college students will talk about anything, honestly, when anyone is in the room, whether it's warden or no warden or officers or no, they will just speak their mind and give you honest feedback. For the most part, that's been my observation. That's it.
Okay. Maybe that's a good point. Maybe we need to get the schedules for each institution before we go. I mean, sometimes we got 1 in the afternoon, 1 in the morning in a couple places. So maybe we might need to switch it. You know, do the other 1 in the morning. I mean, I don't know, but Angela, let's you and I talk about that. Make sure we talk about getting some more information from the institution before we just sort of walk in. You know, we need to do better, some preparation ahead of time with each facility. And so John, maybe we can work with you on that, and then with Danielle for public safety. Okay. All right. Any other questions coming up? That hands up. That Ainsley, do you see that?
Nope.
Okay. So let me just say, for next time, we want to go over this. I would like everybody who made comments, I'm going to listen, make very specific comments about special ed. On this report, I want you to go through and write questions and send them to Ainsley and me, or send them to everybody, not just us, but we will put them together and try to get them into a format for discussion at the next meeting, and spend, you know, significant time on that to see what other data we need, what other questions we have. We may not be able to come up with a lot of conclusions yet, but we can certainly raise issues and more concerns and things we need to find out to help us in our job. So we will do, and the next thing that we'll also do, in addition to doing through this database and information that Director Rubin sent us, I want to start talking about delivery reform, taking some information from different state directors as to why they think their model is good, pros and cons, put out there, because if we need to be in a position to start talking about what kind of things can we change, can we improve upon in the delivery of education. That's the specific task of this commission. So I want to start really talking about that, but I didn't want to really start talking about that till we get a lot of data. And we're getting more and more data. And I don't want to talk about things without knowing as much as possible about what's going on. So we'll share those comments from the state directors that they gave us. Ainsley's already put some of it into chart form. And we will talk about this report and more data we need, because right after this next meeting will be May. In June, we got to put a preliminary report together. And I'll probably probably also provide an outline of maybe what the report might start looking like, the interim report. Okay. And then, of course, if HB 877 changes, it's going to give us a little more breathing room. Because the report we'd have a report due at the end of the year, but not an interim report. But we'll change according to what happens with the legislation if we have to. Okay. Ainsley, and what are we missing here? Anything?
Nope.
I hope this has been useful today. It has for me, and I've really appreciated the hard work that many of you put into this, and the questions you raised, and looking forward to our next couple steps here. So we will meet again. What's our next meeting date, Ainsley? May.
Let me take a look. I believe it's May 8th.
May 8th.
Yep, it's going to be May 8th.
Okay. And are we gonna meet earlier? Are we gonna meet? I mean, the session's over. Are we gonna meet at 10 instead of 9?
Yes.
Okay. So we will move that back to 10 o'clock, and so that people can, be a little more wider awake or whatever. And although I don't mind getting up this early, it makes my day longer, and now with the sun and all that, with longer days, I like that, So, and I thank everybody. I really appreciate, Judge, I really appreciate this, your attendance. I mean, and what you told us about your background is so crucial for the population we're working with, and your insights would, and your thoughts are really welcome at any time. And if you have any reactions to these reports or things you want to share, thank you so much for your participation. Okay. Any other comments for the good of? So our committee will have a higher ed meeting at 1 o'clock, and we have other committee schedules, for the career tech and ABE, GE, special ed. So anybody can participate in those. The announcement goes out to everybody. You're welcome to tune into any committee, even if you're not, quote, a member of that committee. This is a wide open effort. We want to be explicit and inclusive and transparent with everything we're doing. And don't forget about the website. You can go and look at all of them. It's really, the Dropbox is really growing. We got a lot of good stuff there in case you want to, look up some issues and information. Okay, John, you want to have anything you want to, in closing here, since we had a lot of discussion on data from Dollar?
Yeah, no, just excited for the opportunity to simply improve on the programs that we have, and certainly if anything comes up along the way. Ramika, I'm looking at you. There were a couple questions you had that I actually have answers for, but I don't want to belabor this meeting. So by all means, reach out to me directly if you like. There's certainly many layers to this onion that we can peel back at your pleasure. So
yeah, this is a very complicated issue, but it's a very important issue, and it gets to the heart of some of the issues in our society and things we can do about it. So I really appreciate everybody's sincere effort, and I really appreciate that we are represented everywhere from formerly incarcerated to court system, higher education, various departments, legal folks, etc. Everybody has a stake in this, and it's really great to see this such a collection of good, talented people who are very sincere, want to make something better and work better. So thank you very much. And to be continued. We'll be sending out summaries and information, and I look forward. Does anybody, looks like Jocelyn wants to say something?
Yes. Hi. Hello. I know I came back in, like I said, session is an insane time, but I do understand that there was some requests for information on library services for incarcerated individuals. Funny enough, Karen Simpson hired a librarian. And so University of Illinois did a really great speaker series, and they brought, somebody who's incarcerated that we discussed. Oftentimes people think that those incarcerated want just law books. Funny enough, those incarcerated love Dragon Ball Z and comic books and manga. And so whatever you want from me, happy to compile some county resources on libraries. The American Library Association does have LibGuides on that as well, which I'm a member of. So feel free to ping on absolutely anything you need on that side.
I appreciate that. I'll close with this. You reminded me of a story. Years ago, when I was a resource teacher at the Maryland Penn, which was still a building, we had special populations in one of the tiers, and we'd go once a week around cells and ask for people that needed something educational. And I remember going to this one cell, and the guy said, "I've been asking for these books from the library, and I haven't gotten a response." And he gave me the titles, and I said, "I'll see what I can do, and I'll come back in a week." Well, I got the books from Munich Private Library, and a week later I went and I gave the books, and the guy was stunned that somebody would give him ththese books. So I said, well, that's my job, And so it was 3 years later, I don't know, 4 years later, I was in Hagerstown, the parking lot, and this fellow started walking up to me, and he shook my hand. He said, "Remember the books you brought me?" I mean, just that one incident, how impactful giving somebody a book could be. And so library services are essential. They really are. We need to know more about what's going on. Thank you. Anybody else? Well, with that, we'll wish you all a happy month and a happy springtime. And let's pray for better news from Washington, D.C. on